All right. I guess we are live now. So I'm just waiting for because I have the full screen on. I can't see the chat window actually. Okay.
Arun sir, we are live. You can start.
So very good evening to wherever you're joining us from, evening, afternoon. What I would really like is, first of all, welcome all of you to the session. If you can just let me know on the chat window what stage of the prep you are at. And I want to keep this next 1 hour as very focused towards solving a particular problem that you have, correct? So all of you are coming here because there is one problem that is in your mind. And what typically goes through the mind of someone who is approaching GMAT in the month of November is, I have missed R1, the round 1 deadline. I have now maybe 2 months left before I can apply in round 2, correct? So if you can just let me know in the chat window, how many of you are looking at applying in R2? How many of you have a plan to get it done with in the next 1-2 months, so that you have ample time to apply in round 2? Yeah. So Kabir, I'm not sure if the GMAT is tomorrow. I'll try to see if I can incorporate some tips, because when I say last minute, it's more in terms of figurative thing, in the sense it's for people who want to do it just because they are rushed for R2, right? That's the intent. But let us see if we are able to look at it. So we do have someone, Nimishika. She's applying in R2. Taking the GMAT on the 17th, great. Okay, Saga has about 2 to 5 weeks, 2.5 weeks. So what I will try to do is, I will try to keep this session as action-packed as possible, correct? So I'm going to be giving you a lot of tips. So what I would also like you to do is, if you have a paper and a pen or any kind of digital note-taking, please keep that ready. So some notes you will make, so that after the session, there is a specific takeaway for you, and you know exactly what you need to be doing, right? I also have Tinaya, good morning, wherever you are. I'm applying in R2, taking GMAT on 30th November. Great. Going to book GMAT for 20th November. Great. So all of you are looking at R2. You want to get GMAT with as soon as possible. Excellent. So let me do this, but please do keep your questions coming in on the chat window. The idea is to help answer that one burning question that you have in your head, correct? There is some problem for which you are coming and attending this session. Let us make sure that the next 1 hour, we are focused on solving that problem. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to start by just giving a quick intro of why am I telling you whatever I'm telling you. I've been teaching the GMAT for the last 2 decades. I've taught more than 30,000 students in my lifetime, many of whom I have mentored to get into the top B school. You might have seen my videos on YouTube. I'm also the founder of Crackverbal and the chief, content person behind it. I've also been featured on MBA.com, so that's another thing. We work very closely with GMAT, so we understand what the test is. What I'm teaching you here is not maths or English. I'm going to be teaching you about the specific test for which you need to arm yourself with a specific skill set, right? So what is that skill set that you need to have? What is the kind of mindset that you need to have? We will be getting in today. That's my intent. If you want to, see me teaching GMAT, I'm going to be giving you some resources where you can see me actually teach you some concepts, and I'll kind of take you as we go, right? What is it that I'm going to be leaving you with today, correct? So first thing that I want to have is the right GMAT prep mindset, okay? What is this mindset? How do I develop this prep mindset? if you ask me, the people who get high scores are not necessarily the smartest ones, right? I've usually seen that smart people are typically lazy, right? They end up, not putting in as much effort and fall short of what potentially they could have scored. But people who have the right approach towards the GMAT, who have the right mindset towards the GMAT, are people who typically succeed on the test, right? This is my experience of 20 years, right? I mean, I'm distilling it for you, okay? The second is, one question that all of you may have, and tell me in the chat window if it resonates with you, but I'm just looking at it. Ashish asked this, can I tackle GMAT within 2 to 3 weeks? I'm giving it last minute. Great. So I'm going to be addressing that, right? That is the whole intent of today's webinar, which is how do I get into in the last minute? How do I maximize my score? How do I get to the top peak end of my potential? That's what we are trying to do over here. So what is it that I can focus on, right? There is so much to do. I have only 3 weeks. So what is that thing I could put my blinkers on and I can, keep going on that path? Third thing, I have only limited time, right? And I am juggling my work. I have my personal life. And along with that, I have to study for the GMAT. How much should I study? What material should I take? When should I study? All those things we will discuss. And finally, I think the most important thing is, when do I know I'm ready for it? Right now, I'm saying 20th November, I'm saying 1 month, but maybe 5 weeks later, I could score 20, 30 points more, maybe, correct? So what is that right point at which I know that I'm done and I should take the GMAT, correct? So we'll also look at that bit. And finally, I will also be talking about how can I help you in the next 2 months, right? How do we use our experience, expertise to help you kind of get to this bridge? Because, this is stuff that you can figure out on your own, or you can kind of be taken through this by someone who's kind of experienced in that. And that's what we will discuss in today's session as well, right? Just wanted to go back to this. Okay, so Kabir, I'm going to be addressing some bits of last minute. Ashish, 9 days. Okay, I'm going to be tackling that. Mahika, 18 November, possible to answer. Great questions. Thank you for asking. Let's see if I can answer them. So, and finally, so the first thing that I want you to understand is the right mindset, right? How many of you are terrified of studying for the GMAT? As I said, there is so much happening, correct? And in all of this, what happens? We lose focus. We start studying, then something happens, right? Diwali happens. Everything was going, I was actually on track in September, but something happened after Dussehra. I just missed it for a month. And then somehow, what happens? How do I feel when I'm not studying? Do I feel positive? Do I feel negative? I'm going to start feeling negative, correct? So when I feel negative, I start feeling guilty, right? And when I start feeling guilty, what happens is you end up losing more time. And you lose more time, it is harder for you to get back, right? So the first thing that you need to commit yourself to this thing called GMAT momentum. GMAT is all about momentum. Whatever time that you have to make sure that you're able to maximize this time, for which you need to have very clear goals that you need to set for yourself, correct? And you need to see how do you go meeting them. And this is human psychology, right? You have to, make this, you have to hack your brain, correct, into liking to study for the GMAT. How do you do that? Now, if you think about it, the way you approach GMAT, and be very honest, is it stressing you, or are you approaching it with a sense of curiosity? And you can let me know in the chat window when you don't know a question, or when you see a concept, or when you see a big passage, or when you see a CR, stimulus that you are not able to understand. What is your reaction? Stress, Kabir? Mahika started with curiosity, turned into stress. Why? Because we have this whole thing around, this goal orientation, correct? Now, let me understand. For a minute, let us hypothetically go to 2026, okay? 2026, you have already graduated from the B school. So now it is 2022. 2023, you're hoping to seek admission, for which you will graduate in 24 or 25, correct? 26, you're probably in your post-MBA career already, okay? Those of you who are thinking, I want to get into consulting. Those of you who think I want to get into product management, despite the fact that Meta has laid off like a ton of product management folks, in the US. How many of you think that I want to get into investment banking or private equity or venture capital, right? So now what you need to understand is what is it that these roles require you to do? These roles require you to do a bunch of things. A, they require you to read a lot. You will be surprised the amount of material that you're going to be reading, okay? So if you don't like reading, time to get used to it because you will need to read. As a product manager, you will need to read a lot, right? If you're a consultant, the first thing before you get into the client is you go through the entire client history, right? You have to get into the data, understand what their systems are. So there is a lot of reading there. But your boss is not going to say, well, you have read all of it, so tell me. He's going to ask you very specific questions for which you don't need to depend on your memory. You should be able to know how do you go, how do you interpret that data and tell it to your manager or your client. This is reading comprehension, right? That is what reading comprehension is really testing you on. If you look at it from a B school perspective, you are going to be reading a lot of case studies that will be given to you one day before the class. And you'll be up all night reading 65 pages, right, of a company's history to be discussed in the class the next day. So approach it with a sense of curiosity. Say that, look, this is not a skill that I will wish away. It's not for GMAT, but it is for life. If it is a particular chosen path, then maybe this is the right time for you to ask yourself, is this the right chosen path? Because this is what I'm expected to do. But again, it's not just data. You need to also analyze the data critically, correct? If external information is going to help it, external information is going to hurt it, right? What are the inferences that I can draw, right? What are the conjectures? What is this? This is nothing but critical reasoning. So if you look at all of the critical reasoning stimulus, what you will realize, one thing about them is they will all mimic what happens in the real world, right? Very simple example, I'll give you an OG question. Many of you might have solved this question. It talks about bamboo being more tensile than steel and stronger than concrete and cheaper. And, it's better than concrete. But they say it is not used to build high rises. Okay, it's not used to build high rises. So this fact that that though it is this, it's not used to build high rises, has to be connected to another fact which says that areas where the land value is high, you will build high rises. If you go to, let's say, any city in the world, right? You go to New York, you go to Bombay, you go to any city, downtown, you'll always have vertical structures, right? So then it says, why are then bamboo not used in places where land costs are very high? Somewhere, GMAT is expecting you to put all of this together. And when you see that as a complete picture, you will start liking critical reasoning, right? Some of it may not make sense, don't worry. But to a large extent, it is a good skill for you to have even in the real world, right? Because every argument is having an underlying assumption, right? Now, all of this has to be presented to your boss, to your manager, to your client. How do you do that? On a PPT where you're going to have text and you need to make sure that you're crisp, you're clear, you're to the point, and there is no grammatical error. That is what sentence correction is testing you, right? So, and all of this will have numbers involved, and that too not trigonometry or any simple basic arithmetic algebra kind of numbers. And that's again what problem solving and data sufficiency does. So I think what I would say is start loving the GMAT. Okay, if you start studying for the GMAT with a sense of curiosity, with a sense of appreciating what the question is really doing to you, right? If you get inside your head and ask yourself, why did I do this? Or what could I have done differently? Could I have guessed this? Could I have moved on? Right? I'll be showing you some strategies of how to actually do this, how to get inside your head, when you're analyzing a question. So I'm going to be giving you a framework, okay? But that's really what you need to do in order to get into the zone, into the momentum of studying for the GMAT. A quick point at this point, whatever I'm saying, is it making sense? Alak, loving GMAT for the last 2 years, you want? I agree, absolutely, right? So the idea is there a way by which we are able to apply our learning, and are we able to kind of, implement it, right? That's really the tough bit, correct? All right, great. Thanks, Ashish, Rajat, Ayushi. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you the second point, correct? Which is like, before I get that, one of the things that happens is when you start studying for the GMAT, you see that everyone else is in the same boat. And, you have also success stories when you hear about students who have been that, done that, who have scored. When you hear all those, it kind of motivates you. So we have a LinkedIn community. So I would request that you can join us there. We'll be sharing the link on the chat window, right? So get your mindset right. Second point, know what area that you need to focus on. See, sometimes what happens is when I hear people talk about GMAT, they talk about it in a very abstract way, okay? So how's your GMAT? Okay, like I'm getting 650. Look, there are 5 people who can get 650 and each one can have a different reason, right? So you need to understand what is the reason for you to get stuck at wherever you are stuck. And you cannot do that by just having a very broad approach to it. You need to ask yourself, dig deeper. Okay, if I'm looking at sentence correction, what are the topics I have? I have subject-verb agreement. So first of all, I need to know how a sentence is constructed. I need to know subject-verb agreement. I need to know pronouns. I need to know modifiers. I need to know parallelism. I need to know comparisons. I need to know tenses and to some extent idioms, correct? I need to know all of this. And what GMAT will also do is it will not test you on one rule alone. It is not going to give you parallelism alone. It will give you parallelism along with modifiers, correct? So you need to know how to approach these questions. Similarly, if you look at critical reasoning, find the assumption, strengthen, weaken, evaluate. All of this is in one bucket. Then you will have inference, draw the conclusion, fill in the blank. All of that is in one bucket, content-based. And then you will have bold face, mimic the argument, which are structure-based, correct? So there are 3 types of broad questioning you have. So all of this you should know. You should have a very clear approach, right? So that part of the theory, if you look at reading comprehension, for example, you should have a very clear approach of how am I going to read the passage? How long am I going to spend on that? How do I go through the questions? And, how do I eliminate? So all of that, you should have a very strong sense. The second part of it is, let's assume you know the theory, correct? Arithmetic, time, speed, distance, ratio, proportion, all of that you know. But seeing it on the question, on the test, is a completely different equation, right? So what happens is, now you need to see how the sentence is framed. How do I now create an equation out of it, right? Or if it is in the case of data sufficiency, I need to have an approach, right? Which is, do I go with A or do I go with B, right? So, how do I go along eliminating that? So all of this, what is the kind of ranges that I need to have in order to plug in for me to, get it? So you need to have that approach, right? And finally, what also happens is, what is your strategy on the test? Maybe all of this is great in practice, but by the time you get to the test, in the 2 hours, 1 hour for quant, 1 hour for verbal, broadly speaking, 62 and 65 minutes, are you able to perform at your optimal best, correct? If you ask anyone who's done well on the GMAT, these are the only 3 reasons. He knows the theory, he knows how to apply it in that given question, and he knows largely what is the strategy he's going to have for the test. And if you see someone who's not able to score well, it is one of these 3 areas. And mostly people worry too much on area number 1, theory. If you ask me, theory is not your problem. Application number 2 and strategy number 3 could be more problematic. So very important that you focus on only solving questions, right? At this point, with the time that you have, I think maybe you have a one-day brush up of the theory, spend no more than that. But now your focus should be on solving questions. And when you solve questions, right, it's very important for you to understand a very, very important metric that comes into play, which is the difficulty level of the question, right? What I have over here is the percentile chart for quant and verbal, right? If you see, even a perfect 51 in quant is going to give you only the 97th percentile. It's not going to give you 99, right? Is the right-hand side table. But if you see, by the time you get to 40, you drop down precipitously to a 35%. But look at verbal. Verbal is very different, right? Verbal, if you see, a 51 is 99, but so is a 45. So verbal, you can actually go down. I mean, when I say go down, you can actually score a 36, 38 and actually do well on the GMAT. Look at the table on the left-hand side. Okay, starts off with Q45 V27, which is 600, right? Which is around the 50th percentile. But by the time you get to a Q51 V44, goes to the 99th percentile. In fact, Q50 V42 is also a 99th percentile. So you need to ask yourself, where am I? What part of the journey am I trying to cover? Because you have to understand the journey from 600 to 700 is very different than the journey from 700 to 750. Correct? So you need to know which part of the journey are you in. Is it a question of you not knowing the theory? Is it that you know the theory but you're not able to apply it? Or somewhere you're not able to put it together on the day of the test? Okay, knowing the reason will help you. Because what we have seen is most students will get stuck in a particular zone, right? I'll give you some examples of what those zones could be. So on the left-hand side, you see Q40 V25, correct? So that is, somewhere maybe in the 550s, correct? That means you have not understood the concepts and you don't have a strategy for every question type, which means you are approaching it like a hack. Like I'll go and take the test and see how it works. You need to know the concepts. Okay. If you don't know the concepts, you will not go to do well on the GMAT. But then what happens? Look at the next, which is a Q45 V30. This is typically low 600s, right? 620 kind of score. What I know here is, your concepts are in place, but what is happening is somewhere on the GMAT, when GMAT is giving you tougher questions, you are somewhere getting it wrong, correct? Or you could be in the third. Third is somewhere around 680, okay? You have a Q48, you have a V35. Pakka, you know the theory and easy questions you are able to solve. But what happens is one of two problems. Either there are some exceptions to the rule. For example, if you look at modifiers, there is a particular concept called absolute phrases, right? Or absolute modifiers. Now that concept gets tested only at a higher level. So then what happens? Suddenly you spot an exception, but you are going with your original rule, right? That's problem number one. Problem number two, you have poor test-taking strategy, which means you know your stuff, but somehow on the GMAT, you are falling short. Because really, a guy who gets a 48 in quant, he can get a quant 50. Or a person getting V35 can get a V40, right? What is stopping them, right? So if you look at it, people who really ace it on the right side, the last box, they have practiced enough to know and apply the concepts, but they are also able to quickly eliminate and they know when to guess. And these are very important skills, right? They know when to eliminate, they know when to guess. If you ask me the difference between a high scorer and a poor scorer, the poor scorer will think, how do I solve the question? The high scorer will think, how do I get to the right answer? Correct? There is a shift in your thinking, right? You're not trying to get 800 on the test. You're trying to optimize the test so that you are able to get the maximum possible score that the algorithm will be able to give you, right? That's really what we are trying to attempt over here. So that's very important that you know what part of the journey that you are on. So if you are at a Q49 V37, Vishwesh or Alak, you are at a Q46 V33, correct? Wonderful. Q39, as you saw from the percentile, that is something that you need to get improved to at least to get to a 45. So I think that journey to get to from a 40 to a 45 is a different journey. 45 to 48 is a different journey, and then 48 to 51 is a different journey. So all of you seem to be at the periphery of a particular barrier. I just wanted to also let you know that I had taken a webinar on this particular topic. I had deep dive, which is stuck in the GMAT 600, how to get to 700 plus. So it has a lot more. Some of it I'll be discussing today as well, but I would request that you can go and have a look at it at a later point. Yeah, so Q45, B30, Kabir, the whole idea is, let us see how do you maximize it. Well, one thing that I want to tell you over here is, if you look at it, GMAT algorithm is a very sensitive algorithm, right? It is calibrated in a very precise way. Good thing and bad things, right? So the good thing is, okay, let me tell you only the good thing. So the good thing is that on the GMAT, I have had students who have scored maximum 660, 640, okay, on the practice test, but on the day of the GMAT, ended up with a 690 or a 700, right? I have seen students who have scored max 700, but on the day of the GMAT get 760, right? They have come and said, I have never gotten this even in my practice. So is it possible for you to perform at your optimal best on the day of the GMAT? Absolutely. And I'm going to go back to the first point that I said, right? It is a mental game. GMAT is about what's going in your head, what's going in your brain. So it is important for us to kind of pause, understand, appreciate it, and then, approach GMAT that way, correct? So that's my submission to you, that GMAT algorithm is very sensitive. Always believe that you can score well, you will score well, okay? With that, let me get on to the next point. So this is around how do you analyze, this is how you can get inside your head, correct? So many a time what I've seen is students, when they solve the GMAT question, they don't spend as much time on it, okay? So here is a very simple way by which mentally you can analyze any question. So any question will come in one of these 5 categories, right? A, you nailed it. Nailed it means length is 5, breadth is 4. What is the area of rectangle? Like, you can wake up at 2 a.m. and you can solve these questions. These questions are useless because they are not going to teach you anything. If you are at a 700 level, this could be a 600 level question. If you are at a 600 level, this could be a 450 level question. Correct? You get the sense. It's an easier level than where you are, right? That question is not going to serve your need. Second, you did a very silly mistake. And remember, you have not fallen into a trap. Falling into a GMAT trap is a separate thing, okay? But this is a genuine mistake. Like in the table, it said in thousands, the answer was 17, but you picked 17,000, right? So simple things that you missed, or something that happened, you picked B instead of C and you clicked next, something of that sort, right? Again, we are not going to learn a lot from these questions. You just need to kick yourself, right, for making that mistake, and just tell yourself that I can't afford to make such mistakes, right? So on the GMAT, you have to be very conscious. But again, you're not going to learn so much as you're going to learn from the third category, which is guessed it, okay? And while I'm telling you about guessed it, I'm just going to take like a pause for a second and just look at this question. Would you recommend following the strategy of getting to the answer rather than solving? So Alak, whatever you're doing in practice is what you should do on the day of the test. I hope you are not doing 2 different things, right? So your approach is to prepare yourself for the day of the test. So you should be practicing in a very simulated environment. Knowing you started at 5:10, my take is, you know where you are. The idea is how do you improve on it, correct? So now you have a different journey. Like I told you, you are at a journey where you are probably at, a lower Q and a lower V, but eventually you are somewhere in this journey. Remember, everybody is on a journey. It's a curve, correct? So everybody is on the curve somewhere. As long as you move ahead, you make progress, be happy, right? So don't worry about where you are. That is not a very, it's not going to help you, correct? Right. So here is a question that I have for you, and I would love if you could answer me in the chat window. Whenever you're between the last 2 answer options, how many of you feel that invariably you end up picking the wrong answer option? Just say yes. Like you're between C and D, and you pick up C and you see E is the right answer. Has it happened to you? Or does it happen to you often? Yeah. Yes, a lot of you feel that it resonates with you. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm going to tell you how the human brain works. Okay, there is something called as Murphy's Law. I don't know if you have heard of it, right? That when you're standing in a line, if your line is moving slowly, you move to another line. But now suddenly what happens, that line starts moving slowly and your line moves fast, correct? And you're like, man, I missed it. The point is your brain tends to remember only the things that it found painful, which means out of 100 cases, there were 50 times when C was the right answer and 50 times when E was the right answer. What happened? You remembered the times when you got it wrong. You conveniently forgot the time when you got it right. When you got it right, you said, Acha, I nailed it. Like, hey, I don't knew it. Yeah, what's the big deal? So we tend to justify it. But in reality, the questions where you are between the last two answer options, even before you get to see the answer, even before, I will tell you how you should approach it, okay? First, solve the question, okay? Don't look at the answer. You have solved it in the given time, roughly 2 minutes. Now what you do is you go back and you try to solve it again with infinite time. See if you would change your answer. Here is a surprising fact. Most people will not change their answer. But what happens? We get a comfort when we get extra time. You know, it's almost like when I go shopping, I don't want to buy it immediately. I'll like, wait, let me think. And so GMAT also is like that. You'll never want to commit. But when you get more time also, you'll say, I wouldn't have changed my answer. Then what you do, look at the answer, see which ones you got right, see which ones you got wrong. The ones you got wrong, now that you know what the right answer option is, don't look at the explanation. Okay? Try to force yourself to explain that. If now that I know C is the right answer, what about E looked right to me, for which I was attracted, and what about C looked wrong to me, which is why I eliminated it. That delta is where growth is going to come. So don't look at goal 700, 750 and all that. You can control only the present. And what you can control right now is every question that you want to solve has to give you the delta that has to keep moving you ahead. And the questions where you are between the last two answer options is actually telling me something. It is telling me that there is some concept, some confusion, something in your mind, which if it gets clarified on the GMAT, such a question, you will not end up in the same situation. Because none of the questions that you're going to do during the practice is actually going to appear on the GMAT. I hope you know that, right? You even OGs retired questions. But the idea is we are training our mind for those 127 minutes, correct? For 65 minutes of verbal and 62 minutes of quant. That's what we are training. It's like a race. Think of it this way. It's a 400-meter race, right? We have to pace ourselves. And it's very important for you to ask yourself the next part, which is, could I have solved this question faster? Right? Many a times what happens is, there is a, when there is a question that takes more time than it deserves. Okay, I'm going to use this word, deserves. When you're analyzing, you should look at it. Could I have solved this question easier, faster? Or how about this? Could I have guessed this question? Maybe that extra 1 minute that I spent was, diminishing returns because it did not really get me closer to the answer. I was just, going around in circles in my head. I wasn't able to make progress. Okay, I don't want to spend time. Let me guess. Did you guess it? Remember, when you guess, you are in control. But if you're going to run out of time on the GMAT and you end up having, let's say, 5 minutes and you have to solve 10 questions, that point, you are blindly guessing. You don't want to put yourself in that situation, right? So it's very important that you pace yourself on the test. So very important to ask yourself, am I giving it the time that it deserves, right? And also one thing I want to tell you about guessing is sometimes I have students who come and tell me, Arun, I spent 3 minutes on this question, then I guessed it. I just correct them. I tell them you didn't guess it. You gave up. After 3 minutes, if you're taking an answer, you gave up. Guessing is when you are in control. Guessing is when you guess it in 30 seconds. Right? You may walk in with a strategy saying that, look, if I'm running out of time and I see a bold-faced question, I'm not going to look at it. I'm going to blindly pick an answer and move on. That could be a strategy, correct? But whatever your strategy is, make sure that you are going to, solve the question in time. And last one, stumped. And there are a lot of people who end up, having this issue where they were between answer option C and E. They eliminated answer option A the moment they saw it, but eventually they get to see that A is actually the right answer. Whereas we were thinking C or E. How many of you face this during practice? And you're like, wait a second, is this the actual answer? Then you go online. You hope there is a typo because there is no way in the world A could have been right, correct? Because you thought it is out of scope. So that's something that, is what I would say as gold questions, because these questions, there was something that you did not know and something that you're going to learn from these questions. So treasure such questions. Very important that you spend time, again, figuring out what is it that I can do to improve, right? So now if you look at it, analysis is a lot, right? So if I'm solving 40 questions in a subject every day, right? I'm looking at 70 to 80 minutes of solving, but I'm also looking at about 200 minutes of analysis, right? Because I'm spending a lot more with each question. And what it means is you might need to put in 4 hours per day, right? Where do you get 4 hours from? Well, one thing that you could do is start waking up maybe an hour earlier than what you usually do, right? Or maybe you can split. So I'm not asking you to study for 4 hours in a stretch. You possibly cannot. I don't think anybody can study for more than 2 hours, if you ask me, right? So then what you can do is you can have a morning slot of, let's say, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. and then an evening slot of 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., right? So if you can pick 2 slots of 2 hours each, you can do like a bunch of questions. I will do one thing. I'll come back to the questions that I have with from Saloni and Kabir. Okay, I will try to address that. But that is really what you need to do in terms of the prep. But again, I'm saying this because this is last minute. I'm assuming this is priority. If you are saying now also I don't have time, then it becomes hard, right? Then you'll have to look at taking the test perhaps more like in December, correct? So if you have a few weeks left, then maybe having a study schedule distributed over 2 days will help. Got into a vicious cycle of educated guessing in DS, accuracy has gone down. And Karan Kabir said, Arun, doesn't that happen for just some super? Which one? S. So Kabir, depends on what level you are. Remember, everybody is at a level. So there is some guy who's scoring V30. For a guy scoring V30, a V40 is a S level question, correct? But for a guy at a V40, a V30 maybe a nailed it, right? So how you react to each of these is your preparation level, correct? So that's my submission on that. Okay, Saloni, one thing that I want to tell you is, as I said, obviously you are going to go back and ask yourself, what is it that I did not know? Which means in your case, if you are getting more questions where you have no idea, you're learning. Every question that you're solving is helping you get closer to your goal. As I said, you cannot control past, you cannot control future. You can just be on that question. Invest as much time as possible on that question and try to get as much juice out of it. This is what I've seen working for a lot of my students, right? Which is putting in this focused deep study, correct? What it means is no digital distraction. As I said, pick 2 hours, right? Keep your phone away, keep all your distractions away. Tell people, look, I have just few weeks left. I wish I could have done it earlier, but now I'm left with 3 weeks. I have a lot to do. I have to solve a lot of questions. It is very brain intense work. and I need to put 100% of my brain energy into solving the GMAT questions, right? I can't be worrying about like 100 things and, commotion around me or watching TV and, right? So make sure that you are able to put in this. As I said, I'm going to give you a range. Again, this range is based on the fact that you have the time left. Otherwise, I usually suggest 1 to 2 hours. But in your case, I would suggest make sure that you're also creating these as 2 separate study sessions. Okay, so that will kind of give you the focus on it. Okay, what I'll do is I'll kind of get to maybe this part once more. Like I just, so can you tell me now that you know, Ashish, what is your problem in this? Is it 1, 2, or 3, for example? And others can also tell me, where do you think is your problem? And in topics, right? Like in quant, your problem could be 1. In verbal, your problem could be 2, or vice versa, correct? So for example, Dheeraj, in your case, problem is 2, correct? So you know the theory, but somewhere you are not able to apply it onto a GMAT standard question, correct? Perfect. So see, that's what I'm saying. It's good to identify what your problem is so that you are also very mindful and you have the right intention of solving that problem. If you want to be a management consultant, product manager, whatever, right? You need to have problem solving skills. And this is the best way for you to look at studying for the GMAT as a problem that you're trying to solve. Use this framework. Ask yourself, right? So Kabir, again, what I'm saying is, what is hard is relative. Okay. For a guy who's going to score 800, a 700 level question is easy. Correct? I hope you understand what I'm saying. It's all relative. So it's relative to your level, because what is easy, medium, hard, it's your level. Correct? So should we skip tough questions immediately to save time? Ashish, my question is, how do I know that a question is tough? A tough question will not come with a red beacon on top announcing it is tough every time. Some of the really deadly, brutal questions that I've seen on the GMAT are not tough because they look tough. They are tough because they are deceptive, right? The right answer choice will look ugly, right? In sentence correction, it will have all these modifiers come together and you'll say, I would never pick this in my life, right? So I want you to be careful about what qualifies as tough. Right? So should you guess it? I don't know, right? I would say unless and until I just gave you an example of a blind guess, but my suggestion is you need to know. So let us take a question of a CR, right? When do you guess in CR? First, before you even start solving, you look at it, it's a jumbo-sized stimulus. It is on a topic that you don't understand. And you look at it, you read, you get a sense, yeah, I'm going to waste my 3-4 minutes. Do you want to guess? Sure. Correct. But if you're going to do this consistently for the next 10 questions, then obviously GMAT is going to, kind of penalize you, right? So you have to use it judiciously, right? What I would say is get into the question, again, go with sense of curiosity, read the stimulus, correct? Try to get a sense of what they are saying in the stimulus. What will happen is you'll read the stimulus, you'll read the question. At that point, you're making a decision whether you have understood or not. If you have not understood the stimulus in about 60 to 90 seconds, please jettison the question, ditch the question, mark and move on. Again, it's a guess. But I would rather have you guess at the end of 30 seconds than rather have you give up at the end of 4 minutes. Correct? So it's okay. But let's say you have figured out what the stimulus is. Now you go to the answer options. Again, there could be a guessing strategy over here where you are able to eliminate, let's say, a couple of the answer options that are clearly wrong. Then you are left with, let's say, the last 2, you want to make a guess and move on. That's also fine, right? So what I'm putting over here is be conscious that every point on the GMAT, you have to make this decision of should I be investing in this question or not? And the better the sense you get, the higher your scores will be, right? And this is really executive decision making, right? When you end up becoming that hotshot consultant, this is the skill that you will eventually have to develop. Right? Does it matter? Should I do it? That prioritization, correct? I'm just looking at this. Kabir, I'm sorry, I'm asking a bit too much. No problem. But if I'm aim 650 plus, so I just want to make sure, Kabir, if what I said to you was understood. Okay, got it. So Ashish, if you are not able to solve it in the first minute, yes, I think you need to make a judgment call. I will tell you what you should not do, right? This is mistake what people do. How many of you are guilty of this crime? That, for example, in quant, okay, you start the question, you write something, you'll spend about 60-90 minutes doing this, then you'll say, no, I got it wrong. Then you scratch completely, then you take a deep breath, then you start again. If you do that, don't do that. Because there is something about the question that is tripping you, right? Like it's obviously tough, you're not getting it. So best for you to make a guess and move on. That strategy usually doesn't work. Okay. So Alak, I hope that answered your question. That what can I do? That is this question. I remember a student came, it had something about barnacles that got stuck in the ship. He didn't even know what barnacles are. He kept thinking Captain Haddock, and he said, what are these barnacles? And, somewhere he read the stimulus and he just wasn't able to wrap his head around. What can you do about it? Yeah, see, everything is about, how you're. I can't force myself to get a right answer choice. Does that resonate with you? Like, I cannot look at a question and say, Acha, I have to get it right. I want to get it right, but it's not in my control. Sometimes I've had students who come and give me this wonderful strategy which says, Arun, I have decided I will get the first 10 questions right. Then I will start making mistakes. I said, wait a second, who is deciding? Like, if you're a genius that you have control to get the first 10 questions right, then please get the rest of the questions also right. No, why are you even getting it right? So this notion that we control getting a question right or wrong is a myth. What we control is how much we choose to invest in solving that question. That is all we control, right? So Dheeraj, I may have some solutions for you. I'll just hold on, right? Alak, I hope this also I think you've kind of answered this, right? So coming now to this part, which is around what is it that you should study. So one problem that I feel that the internet has caused is there is way too much material. I know people who have a checklist, right? They have like a merko ye karna hai, this, right? And they have like a ton of material they have to cover because in their mind, covering material equal to GMAT score. First, get rid of this notion, okay? For you to do well on the GMAT, you need to know only finite knowledge. In fact, the entire theory, okay, I can teach you in under like 6 hours. That's all, right? The reason you're not getting that high score is for some other reason. And for that some other reason, we have to focus on what is authentic GMAT questions. Because too much free content, very little time, what is going to do? It is going to put me in panic. Do not panic. Take a deep breath. Make sure you are focusing only on official material. The reason I'm saying this is I told you that the GMAT algorithm is very finely calibrated, right? This is the best content. See, GMAT spends close to $2,000 testing each question. Do you know on the GMAT, out of 36 questions on verbal, 6 of them are dummy questions? And out of 31 questions in quant, 3 of them are dummy questions, which means on the GMAT, you are going to get as many as 9 questions which won't go towards your actual GMAT score, 3-digit score. What are these tests? These tests are experimental tests, questions, where GMAT is giving you just to see the question quality. Sometimes what may happen is they get demographic data, right? Because GMAT also knows who was the test taker, what was the score. So it will say, okay, I think that this passage that I see over here seems to be working against people who come from Asia. Why? Because North Americans seem to get this passage right. People from Asia get this passage wrong. Which is why if you have solved the OG, there is this one thing about native Indians. Remember? Supreme Court judgment, reservation, right? If you have solved that question, you'll remember it was a terrible passage. That passage came 20 years ago. I think it is an OG or something. It came 20 years ago. 20 years ago, that question would have appeared on the GMAT when most people were from the US. Today, a lot of people taking it are from India and China. So you will also see that GMAT invests in making the test culturally neutral. It will have a lot of other parameters. So GMAT questions are elegant, right? They are very elegant. I don't think I have a better word than this. There is something about them, maybe some catch over here. There'll always be a good reason why the wrong answer option is wrong and why the right answer option is right. In case you have not done so, what I would suggest, please finish OG. If you have not done OG, please finish OG, right? Understand every question given in the official guide. It is, according to me, a gold mine, has good questions, especially the last 50. Remember, OG, verbal review, quant review, all of it is graded from easy to hard, which means first question is the easiest, last question is the hardest, and everything is on the gradient. So try to solve questions towards the end, right? Really good questions that I've seen in OG. If you have already solved OG, because Saloni, the idea is, they want to make sure that each question that you see is scientific, correct? That is why the algorithm will work. Please do verbal review, quant review. There is also one more resource called Advanced Guide that GMAT has released, where you have about 300 questions that GMAT says are very tough questions. But whatever you pick, don't go too much. I think this is more than enough. If you have this material, in fact, you don't need to do all of it. I have students who have done only OG. I have got 760. I have had students who wanted to do OG, verbal review, quant review, advanced guide, ended up with 720. So it's not like that. But what I'm saying is, this is all that you need to do well. Okay. So one thing that I wanted to tell you is, whatever I told you in the Crackverbal course, we actually provide an official copy of the official guide for those of you who have not solved it and who want to plan to solve it. And we also have video explanations where every theory that I teach in the course is actually answered, by solving that question. So I think whatever I told you, the way to analyze, how to get to inside your head is what we have as our approach at Crackverbal. We believe that theory is too much, right? People learn by solving questions. People learn by analyzing questions. We are all very intelligent, very smart. Once you get to know how to do it, then you don't need 5,000 questions. 50 questions are enough. But getting that approach, getting that orientation, according to me, is very important. In case you want to have a look at it, I'll be giving you a link over here. It will basically be giving you access to 2 live sessions. We also have a bunch of videos on GMAT. We also give you access to some tests. So please go ahead and you get unlimited free trial. You can look at it and see that. Okay, one more problem that I'm going to now get on to is, let me quickly answer Vishwesh's question. Vishwesh, you are right in the sense that typically GMAT, it is not that it is in the first quarter. You will get experimental in the first and the last quarter also. There is a way by which you need to calculate it. If you look at the 600 to 700th webinar, I have actually described this in more detail. So you can have a look at that video, right? The other problem that I feel is, I'm glad to hear that, Kabir. Wish you all the very best. And even after the GMAT, do get in touch with us. What we do is we work specifically with people who are somewhere in the 600 to get to the 700 mark. And even with your college application, having a strategy for your profile, for your GMAT score. End of the day, the reason we are taking GMAT is to get into a B school, right? So keep that in mind as well. So coming to this unofficial marks, what it does is it gives you an incorrect picture of your actual performance. And what I've seen is students just delay taking the GMAT. The only resource that you require at this point is taking the official practice tests. Okay, practice exam 1 and 2 are free. 3, 4, 5, 6 are paid. You can buy it from mba.com. The point is, these are actual GMAT. If you get a score, I can tell you that GMAT has a standard, deviation, published standard deviation of plus minus 29 points, which means if you score a 670 in this test, you can either score 640 or 700. At least you get to know your range, correct? Similarly, if you want to improve, these tests can also be a good way to pace yourself, right? Like every week you can take a test and see if you're improving with subsequent time. One warning that I want to give over here is I've also seen students who believe in taking one test every day. Like if it is their last week, they'll say, I will just take test and I'll learn from the test. Remember, see, it's like this GMAT test, think of it as a thermometer. If you're not well, thermometer will tell you whether you're sick or not sick. Thermometer will not help you improve your health, correct? It is not going to make you better. It is just going to report. So it is like taking thermometer 5 times a day. It's not going to help, right? So I would say use tests like that. If you score a 670, honestly, in about a week, you are not going to improve. That's your level at this point. Maybe 10, 20 points you are going to go here. If you're really looking at 700 plus, there is some shift that will come in about a week's time. So also try to pace your tests in such a way that you are able to maximize it. Again, my recommendation is not to take all the 6 tests, but eventually, take as many tests as you think are important, correct? Solved OG along with quant and verbal, still stuck. I would love to talk, Dhruv. I have something for you coming up, but I just wanted to kind of leave you with this. We had written a blog about some GMAT test day topics. So especially for Kabir, this could be a good resource. You can maybe have a look at it. So just wanted to tell you that a lot of you have very specific problems, right? And each one of you is in a very unique journey. So one thing that I want you to understand is that what your situation is unique to you, but the solution is not unique. Okay, we have had a lot of students who have experienced something similar, and we believe we have what it takes to help you bridge that gap, correct? So why don't you do this? Why don't you talk to someone in the team? You can schedule a call, right? And what we will try to do is we will try to see where are you, what is it that you have done, and how can you improve, and how we can help you improve on the GMAT as well, right? Okay, so I have done what I had. I think we are also well within 1 hour. I promised an hour, and we are kind of coming close to an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and just answer your questions, right? Okay, so Dhruv had this question, done with OG, done with quant review, done with verbal review, stuck at Q44, V32. Dhruv, there is something a little bit missing in your approach. What typically works would be some amount of personal tutoring. That is the only thing that I can think, or because it is now a question of analyzing. Remember, on the GMAT, there are 2 parts to your journey. The first part of the journey is your improvement journey, right? What is the improvement journey? Improvement journey, I'm going to stop sharing over here since I'm anyways talking to you. So the improvement journey is the journey where you did not know a concept, and because now you know the concept, you are able to make an improvement. I did not know what parallelism was. I learned parallelism, my score has gone up. After improvement, when you are at a Q44, 45, B32, you hit what is known as the optimization phase. The difference between the improvement phase and the optimization phase is, optimization phase, there is nothing new for you to learn, right? But you need to know how to apply, how to solve questions faster. And, it's about more strategies, more applications. That's what I would suggest as an answer. If I exhaust all these mocks and still lag behind? So, Alak, my point is, remember one thing on the GMAT. The guy who's going to score high is not going to score high because he solved 6 tests or he scored 5,000 questions, right? Whatever resource we have, official resource, my only submission to you is respect it. And what I mean by respect it is, make sure you analyze your mistakes, right? Don't see what happens. People start going, I want to call 700. How will you get 700? Yeah, you can't get 700 every day by waking and saying, I want 700. Your improvement will happen in these micro things. As I said, don't forget about past, forget about future. What you did, you wasted your time, you didn't, all that gone. GMAT is in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever your time, that also you can't control. What can you do every day? 4 hours, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, 40 questions, analyze the hell out of it. Okay, spend 80 minutes analyzing it, and then 120 minutes, so a 2-hour chunk, and similarly a 2-hour chunk in the evening. 20 questions morning, 20 questions evening. Right? So that's all you control. As long as you control that, everything should work out for you. Okay, I got this this thing which is, are Kaplan mocks worth taking? Mahika, my take is, if you have the right intent behind taking the mock, and the intent is to build your mental stamina, if the intent is to try out some technique, some guessing techniques or whatever, if that is your intent, sure, take it, right? But if your intent is, I will see a score and that will help me decide whether I'm ready for the GMAT or not, please don't, right? Because these are good tests, they have tried to imitate as much as possible. See, if you think about it, GMAT, do you know GMAT makes more money on the test than Apple makes on the iPhone? Okay, think about it, right? It's like you pay for the test, you pay for the ESR, you pay for extra colleges that you apply. So a lot of ways in which GMAT makes money, but then it also puts it right into the research of creating these high quality questions, right? And these high quality questions is what makes GMAT GMAT. Otherwise, tomorrow anybody can say I can create my own test, correct? So the credibility of GMAT hinges on the accuracy of its algorithm, right? So so no company can really do this thing. So base your decisions on official tests. Okay, that's what I would say. All right, Mahika, Piyush, can you give your 2 cents on what is the key for improving CR and RC? Okay, can I do this? Those of you who came in, thank you so much. I'm really glad that I was able to kind of help you on this. I'm going to stay back for a few more minutes. So in case you are okay, you can stay back for some more minutes, and I'm going to take up some questions. All of you ready for some my 2 cents on CR and RC? Okay, what do you want to start? CR, RC? Which one? I'm going to get some water. Thank you, Nimishika. Start with RC. Okay. So I'll ask you one. I'll go with RC, then I'll come to CR. Okay, don't worry. So I want to ask you this question. How long do you spend? I'm going to ask you 2 questions. How long do you spend reading the passage, and how long do you spend per question? So first time you're reading the passage, right? So you're reading it, you have to understand what is the topic, this, that. How long are you spending on that? And how long are you spending on every question that you're solving? Give me a rough estimate, how much you're taking, and be honest, okay? Give me an average time that you take. Some people may take more time reading the passage, right? Some of you may have that approach, that Arun, for me, when I approach RC, first I have to understand it fully. I have to make sense of it. Then only I can get into the questions, right? So 5 minutes. So I'm going to take Piyush's number, right? So Piyush, very honestly, I think 1 minute per question is a little bit of a stretch, correct? I think maybe you take 90 seconds, because so here is something. Have you realized that you will spend more time reading the question and the 5 answer choices than you would spend reading the entire passage? I'm going to let that sink in. Okay, you are going to spend more time reading the question with the 5 answer choices than you are going to spend reading the passage. Correct? So on an average, if you take 90 seconds for answering a question, and I've got a bunch of answers: 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 2.5 minutes, 6 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Maika said Saloni 7 minutes. Okay. Now let me give an example. Maika, I'm going to pick that. By the way, you cannot solve questions in 40 seconds, right, Maika? It's impossible. I hope all of you understand what I'm saying. You have to spend more time on the questions than you're spending on the passage. Because I'll tell you what happens. Okay, let's do a simple form math. You spend 5 minutes per question. You have 3 to 4 questions. 3 questions means 90 seconds per question. You will take about 4.5 minutes to 6 minutes. That means roughly you are taking about 10 to 11 minutes per passage. How many of you are taking about 10 minutes according to the math you are doing? Because here is what is going to happen. If you're going to take 10 minutes per passage, how many passages do you have on the GMAT? You have 4 passages. That means how much time is RC taking up? 40 minutes. If you take 40 minutes out of 65 minutes, how many minutes are you left with? 25 minutes. RC will give you 14 questions. How many questions are you left with? 22 questions. 22 questions in 25 minutes. Already lost cause. Then like Kohli, you have to hit 2 back-to-back sixes. Okay. Your run rate, asking run rate is beyond your control if you are going to end up in that situation. So the first thing that you have to tell is, boss, see, RC is one of those things. RC can destroy CR, SC. SC, CR cannot destroy RC. Like RC also requires you to have an attention span of about 7 to 8 minutes, correct? That also consumes a lot of our mental energy. In fact, any of you have taken a full length test know what I'm saying, right? By the time you see the third RC, your mental energy is drained, correct? So it's very hard for you to focus. But the thing is, we cannot spend more than 7 to 8 minutes, okay? 7 to 8 minutes per passage. So the strategy that you need to have is to spend 7 to 8 minutes, okay? Rajat, if you skip one RC passage, okay, now let me put it. There are 4 passages, right? Out of those 4 passages, one may be experimental, okay? Let us say you end up guessing a complete passage, the entire of which was a scored passage. What it means is, out of the 3 passages on the GMAT, you got one completely wrong, or at least you solved with a 20% probability of getting it right. But then it depends, right? I mean, would you want to do that? Why do you want to do that? I would say the right approach to RC is knowing how to read it. And people think of reading comprehension, they think reading is one word. Reading is not one word. There are 2 types of reading that is required on the GMAT. Okay. One is called skimming. Skimming is when you're reading without knowing what to expect. Like you take the morning newspaper, right? You quickly go through it, what happened, match, score, this, that. That is called skimming. You don't know what to do, what to expect. The second type of reading is called scanning. For example, you're looking up a directory or a dictionary, right? You're not going to start from the first page. You will immediately know where to go to find the answer, correct? On the GMAT, you need to know how to do skimming and scanning, right? So that's a very essential reading skill. Again, this is something that we teach in the RC course. So maybe, you want to have a look at it, but that's my 2 cents. I hope some of you got some sense of what I'm saying, what your problem is. Many a times what happens is when people say that I have a timing problem on the GMAT, it is a symptomatic problem, right? See, it's like this. Having a headache, is that the problem or is it a symptom of a problem, right? It's a symptomatic thing. That is not your diagnosis. Similarly, if you're running out of time, you can't say that is my problem. That's not your problem. That is a symptom. What is the diagnosis? What is the root cause? And invariably, I think reading comprehension, or rather managing your time on reading comprehension becomes a key factor, right? Right. One last point, which is CR. So CR, the biggest problem with CR is, what is this thing called out of scope? What is inside scope, right? It terrorizes people. Yeah, how can this be in scope? So I'll tell you, okay, this is a very simple example. So there will be a question which says, in Mumbai, I was, someone came late to the office and he said he was caught in a traffic jam. Okay, so he came late because he was in a traffic jam. And the question will say, which of the following will strengthen the argument? And the right answer choice will say, there was Ganesh Chaturthi in Mumbai. Okay, because of which the point is, GMAT is expecting you to make these connections. Obviously, you understand culturally, this is not a question someone outside of India can solve, right? But that is the approach you need to have when you try to solve questions. GMAT will always test you on what is inside and outside the scope. So very important that you develop that learning from questions. The other thing that I wanted to tell you is that there are some CR questions that you will never understand. I have had a student who has scored a V44. Just to give you a sense, V44 is, a 99 percentile, right? He told me before the test, there were a couple of questions. He said, Arun, I never understood these questions, right? I always used to get confused and that used to hit my confidence. Yaar, ye question to samajh mein nahi aa raha hai. How will I solve this on the GMAT? But the beauty of it is, in order to get even a V44, you don't need to solve all the questions. So there will always be some questions that you don't need to worry. Some rogue cases, forget about it. Largely get your inside the scope and outside the scope in place. Correct? I just wanted to make sure if I've taken all the questions. So again, we have all of this in the course. As I said, do let us know. I'm going to share the screen again. So in case you have any questions, please do reach out. In first quarter of quant, the average difficulty is only medium. Does this fact imply that hardest level won't appear in the first quarter? Alak, don't look at it that way. But yes, what you're saying is true. But the first 7-8 questions, you will still keep going ahead, right? So, but don't look at it that way. But yeah, you can. Do we have a split of the number of correct questions versus scaled? Saloni, I think there are some rough estimates. Again, there is a particular webinar that we have going to 600 to 700. You see that we have it. But again, you can get in touch. We can help you on that. All right. So very good, guys. I think we stayed for 10 minutes more than what we had expected. I just wanted to get your quick feedback on how you thought this session went. I hope for all of you, with the last minute, at least it gave you some thoughts. The reason I didn't want to give any theory or solve questions is because honestly, you're already doing that, right? But it's important for us to look at GMAT and say, what is it that we can really do in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Thank you, Alak. I'm glad that you found it helpful. Thank you, Piyush. Thank you, Saloni. Wish you all the best. And as I said, the way you approach GMAT to a large extent is, going to be basis. I'll just take a few more questions. So, Arun, again, we have gotten this in the webinar that I mentioned. So there is a lot of details where I give you how to time the question. I give you a pacing strategy, of how much you should be giving. So please look at it. Okay, how important is AWA and IR? So I'll just answer that. But before that, Nimishika, thank you so much. Harmandeep, thank you so much. Really appreciate you staying back for the session. All the best for your GMAT. So Arun, sorry, Saga, let me just answer it. AWA and IR are important, not that you maximize it. There are only 2 things you need to remember when it comes to AWA and IR. Rule number 1, do not get lower than 4.5 in AWA, lower than 5 in IR. Whether you get 6 in IR, 7 in IR, nobody cares. Whether you get 5 in AWA, 5.5 in AWA, nobody cares. Correct? So try to get at least 4.5 and 5. So your prep strategy should not be to get an 8 and a 6, which is the max score. It is to get the min score. Right? That is my first submission to you. Because these schools don't really look at it when they make decision for your admission. Number 2, on the GMAT, you want 100% of your mental energy being used in quant and verbal, right? You don't want to be worrying on the day of the test, what should be the template I should use for AWA. So what I usually recommend students is, whatever section selection order that you have chosen for yourself, make sure that you are also taking AWA and IR during that, correct? So that way you are able to get a practice or a feel, right? So you need to have a AWA template. For IR, for example, you should be guessing, right? So, it's wise that you should be guessing some of the questions, but again, that comes into a little bit of strategy, but I hope I answered your question, Saga, right? So cool, that's all I had for you guys. If you have any other questions, do let us know. As I said, you can always schedule a call, or you can always let us know on WhatsApp. We'll get back to you and figure out how to take your GMAT plan further. Thank you, and have a great rest of the day. Goodbye.